But I want you to know that as the guy says, look for me, and I look way a far distance away, I can see a shadow, I can see an image of something, and I can tell it's a great big ship. I can see it's a big ship. Anyways, he told me, he said, now listen, he said, I'm going to stick with you like a brother. This was the man's words on the ship. He said, listen, I'm going to stick with you like a brother. I'm going to be gone for a while, but I will be back. And when I come back for you, I'm going to stay till the Coast Guard comes. Well, being raised in church, all I could think about was the Lord at this time. I could think about that, you know, He was coming back for me, and I started thinking about realizing the shape I was in. I started realizing the shape that I was in from where I was to where I was right then and where I was at before. And anyways, the man told me, he said, but we'll be able to talk. And I got thinking about it. I said, man, that's our prayer life with God. Why ain't I got my prayer life full with you? And anyways, I lays down in the bottom of the boat, and hours go by. And anyways, every once in a while, the guy would get on the radio and says, how you doing, Mayday? And I said, I'm doing fine. I'm okay. But anyways, as I'm laying there, I get thinking about this big old ship. He done called out. He's hollered for me, made for sure he's going to stick with me like a brother. And being in church all my life, I thank God for having a mother and a father that kept me in church when I was young. It's a blessing, young people. Sometimes maybe you feel like, man, Mom and Dad makes me go to church. Well, guess what? You need to do it. Yeah. You need to do it. And mothers and fathers, if you're doing it, keep on doing it. Keep on doing it. But anyways, as I'm laying in the bottom of the boat, all I can think about is all these things I was taught in Sunday school, and listen to God coming back and Jesus coming back and sticking with me like a brother, and prayer life and all of this. I'm just laying there. Now you understand, I was at the worst part of my life when this took place. I was at the worst place in my life. So I want you to know, if you're at the worst place in your life, that's when God can touch you. Yeah. When you ain't got nowhere else to go but up, God can touch you. And I want you to know that tonight. But anyways, as I'm laying there in the boat, I'm thinking of this. Now hours and hours go by and hours go by. And anyways, the sun went up, the sun went down, and the sun went up, and the sun went down. That's how long I was in this boat. Anyways, it's dark. The wind starts blowing. The waves start kicking up. And I don't know if you've been out there in the ocean or not, but I'm telling you, the waves is 10 or 12 foot high. And when you look outside the boat, all you see is water on the sides. And that's how life is sometimes. Life's got the obstacles in our way. It seems like there's things that life throws us our way, and it seems like the storms won't calm down, buddy. It seems like things just happen and happen. But I want to thank God. I serve a God that can speak peace, be still. But anyways, as I'm laying there in the bottom of the boat's rocking and it's rocking. And this isn't the worst time of my life. I'm telling you that God reached in and pulled me out. But the boat's rocking and I'm just laying there, and then all of a sudden I felt a calmness come around. I felt the waves go away, and it was some peace come around. All of a sudden I hear a big horn honk. Honk! I jumps up. And all I could think about when I heard that horn was Gabriel blow the trumpet. That's all I could think about was he blowed the trumpet. I jumps up, and what was it? It was that great big old ship. That big old ship got on his microphone. He said, I told you I'd be back for you. He said, now I'm going to stick with you till the Coast Guard comes. And I want you to know, church, as he pulled up to the side of me, I was peace. There was no waves. This big old ship blocked the waves. I want you to know the moral of that story was, church, and it wasn't a story, it was my testimony. That in that time of my life, I was at my worst. That big old ship was like Jesus to me that day. He was like Jesus to me. How can you say that, brother? Because whenever God can put a vision into you like that big old ship, He's going to stick closer to the brother. That's how I can say it. But I want to tell you something else, young people. As I start to close with this story, I want you to know, if I could get some of the musicians up here. I want you to know tonight that there was a young man. There was a young man, a wealthy young man. This young man had everything. He had a big old house, big beautiful house. Anyway, this young man let Jesus come into his house one day. Some of the ones from home knows the story. But this young man tells Jesus, come into my house, Jesus. I got the perfect room for you. Anyways, the young man shows him around the house and he brings him up the stairs and he brings him into the best room in the house. Man, it's got the best chandeliers, the best curtains, the best of everything in it. He said, Jesus, I'm going to give you this room right here, Jesus. I want you to have the best I got. This is the best room in my house. I want you to have it. This is where I want you to stay. Well, anyway, he shuts the door and he goes on out. He gets in his everyday life, and it seemed like the young man come home one night from work, and he was working hard late. And anyways, he went up to his room and went to sleep. All of a sudden, he heard a knock on the door. Well, he jumps up, throws his robe on, runs down the stairs, and opens up the door. Sitting there was two imps. Two little devil's imps at the door. He fought, and he wrestled with these little fellas and fought with them. Do we got little things in our life that we wrestle with? Is there little things the enemy brings in there, and maybe it's a thought or whatever it may be? Do we got those? Anyways, he wrestles and he wrestles and he fights and he fights, and finally he shuts the door and he's so exhausted he goes up to his room and he goes back to sleep, and he's just laying there thinking, you know, man, what was that about? I don't understand it. He said, I got Jesus in this house. What's the deal? I don't understand it. Anyways, the next morning he gets up and he goes to work, and he's not thinking. He just in a rush. How many's in a rush sometimes? How many gets into a rush? My God, I'm guilty of it. Anyways, he goes on to work, and he's got a long day. He works all day long, and he works and he works and he works all day. And he comes home late at night. And when he came into his house, he passed out on the couch. He's laying there eating his little food, and he passes out on the couch. Then all of a sudden, in the wee morning of the hours, another knock come on the door. He gets up off the couch, opens up the door. There's 5 imps now, torturing him to death, torturing him about things that happened that day, torturing him about just everyday life. Seemed like he was wrestling and fighting with it all night long. Have you ever had to wrestle with that, church? Have you ever had a thing in your life that you had to fight with that you didn't give God at all? Have you ever had that? My God, am I the only one in here that's ever had to wrestle with something? Anyways, he wrestles with it all night, fighting, and he lays down in his... He finally got the imps out of there and got the door closed without him getting into his house. And he's laying down there on the bed. On the couch. He goes and stretches out. He's wore out. He's exhausted. And he comes to himself. He says, hold it. He said, you got Jesus living in this house. He runs upstairs, opens up the door, and Jesus is standing there with his arms open like this. And the young man says, Jesus, where have you been at? He said, I've been wrestling with these enemies, the imps. I've been fighting this battle. It seems like I ain't got no rest. I've been fighting this battle. He said, my son, you left me up here in this room. He said, there ain't nothing been bothering this room. I've been here. So he says, I'm going to leave you my whole house, Jesus. I'm going to let you open up the door where you can handle my whole house. Anyways, the young man is just totally wore out, exhausted, and he's laying there asleep. All of a sudden, he hears another knock.